Charles Ayo is my name, and I'm most delighted to be part of the Frontier Science Seminar Series 2021. And my talk is on African science in global context, current and future perspectives. My presentation outline is as shown on the slide, and I'm going to start immediately with a few words of appreciation. First, to the Frontiers initiatives in collaboration with the Embedded Consulting Nigeria Limited. And I want to appreciate the convener, Dr. Bright Owaro, the co-convener, Emma Sob, and every distinguished African scholar that are connected to this platform. Let's get to know our continent, Africa. Africa as a continent has 5 regions: the North, the South, the West, the East, and Central Africa, with the number of countries specified on the slide. And according to the source, as of the year 2017, there are about 170 million Africans in the diaspora. If you ask me, Africa is a land of opportunities. We are not disadvantaged in any way. As a continent, we started well, but somewhere along the line, we lost it. Please just listen to this video clip.
Opportunities abound everywhere, but mankind is so blind they can't see it. And when you see challenges, they are only wrappings of opportunities. All the challenges you see around you, inside them are hidden eternal opportunities, just for someone to be able to see it. You never have a champion that is not challenged. It is overcoming the challenge that brings out the champion in you. There are problems in Nigeria, but there are no nations without problems. There are no nations without challenges. The issue is that some are committed to solving their problems, while others are celebrating their problems. There are really no poor nations, but there are poor people in every nation. It is when the number of the poor outnumber the rich that we call it a poor nation. But when the rich in a nation outnumber the poor, then we said we have a rich nation. There are rich people in very poor nations who will still be classified very rich in the richest nations of the world. So you are not poor because you are in a poor nation. You are poor because you have not been empowered to live above it. So when you are truly empowered, you deliver results at the same rate anywhere you are in. Power delivers same quality of results anywhere. Not to be pitied, you are to be envied. All we need to do is to locate what it takes to outshine our peers in our field. In your field, what it takes. And I'd like to start by saying this, that the fundamental secret of empowerment is knowledge. So the news you assess is what defines the changes in your life. That's why only thoroughly informed people become practically transformed. Knowledge is the secret of sustainable empowerment for unlimited achievement. Therefore, investment in knowledge is the gateway to sustainable empowerment. It takes the knowledge of the truth to remain increasingly empowered in your journey so as to fulfill your destiny in a grand style. Let's come down to natural context. Information. Now, 2900 BC to 300 BC, Africa was leading in education. History confirms that Greek historians, architects, mathematicians, sociologists, archaeologists came into Egypt to receive their education. And that time, Africa was the center of civilization. Because wherever education goes, their civilization goes. Now, the Greek took over from there, and now you have the Platos, the Aristotles, the Socrates. And then the Romans hijacked it. And then the British hijacked it. And wherever education went, their civilization went. And then the Americans took it over. Nothing empowers like knowledge. And that's why we have an army of powerless people in Africa. Let me show you this. Schooling only gets you literate. It is investment in literature that creates your actual future. What you were taught in school was as it obtained then. But what you need now is as it obtains in the now. So you need updated insight to remain current in your field. Here we celebrate certificates, but in developed countries they celebrate discoveries. Nothing empowers like knowledge. It is investment in knowledge that empowers you for unusual accomplishment. People don't fail because they don't know nothing in an exam. They fail because they don't know enough. So he got 30%. He got something. But it's not equal to pass mark. Most of us just run around with failure marks saying we have done all we know. Now all you know has not guaranteed you success, so go and know more. The secret of sustainable empowerment is an undying quest for more and more insight in your field. There is no prayer that can empower you above insight. The prayer you need is prayer to know which materials to read, and prayer to have grace to understand what to read, and that understanding is what actually empowers you. Your majestic command in the race of life is essentially a product of your depth of insight in your field. The truth is this: investment in knowledge is the very secret of sustainable empowerment. Opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. David Oyedepo, the presiding bishop of the Winners Church International and the proprietor of Covenant University, as well as Landmark University, all in Nigeria. I had the privilege of working with him for 16 years before taking up my present appointment with the Trinity University. And the summary of the whole thing is, Africa started well. We lay claims to being the cradle of civilization. It all started well, but somewhere along the line, we are nowhere to be found. So let me continue with my presentation. It is no longer tenable that the colonial masters are responsible for the underdevelopment of Africa. Some African countries gained independence several decades back with little or no tangible development across the socio-economic and political landscape of the continent. Africa lays claim to being the cradle of civilization and having one of the oldest universities in the world, the Al-Azhar University, founded in 988 AD in Cairo, Egypt. Today, there is no single African university among the top 100 universities in the world, according to the Times Higher Education University ranking. The University of Cape Town, South Africa, has consistently remained the best in Africa, with position within 101 and 200 in the world. Let us look at 10 African inventions that changed the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the origin of mathematics was traced to Egypt, arts to South Africa, writing, sub-Saharan Africa and Egypt, medicine, Egypt, mining and metallurgy, Tanzania, architecture, Egypt, even cooking to South Africa. Therefore, many inventions from Africa contributed to the birth of every technology that exists today. Let us again look at renowned African scientists and leaders in the world. Ahmed Hassan of Egypt, known as the father of femtochemistry, and a 1999 Nobel laureate. We have Philip Emeagwali of Nigeria, who won Gordon Bell Prize for price performance in high performance computing applications. Christian Neethling of South Africa, a South African cardiac surgeon who performed the world's first human-to-human heart transplant operation. We also have Dr. Oluyinka Olutoye of Nigeria, who led a team of surgeons to remove a large tumor that grows on the tailbone of a fetus and then return the 23-week-old fetus to the mother's womb to world acclaim. We have Sidney Brenner from South Africa, a biologist who is a Nobel Prize winner. Again, he founded Molecular Sciences Institute in Berkeley, California, United States. How about Dr. Jane Jacques, who was the first to encounter Ebola in 1976 and has been at the forefront of research into solving the menace. Wole Soyinka of Nigeria, the 1986 Nobel Prize winner in literature and the first sub-Saharan Africa to be honored in that category. We have Felix Konoti Ahulu of Ghana, ranked among the 100 greatest Africans of all time and widely regarded as a global authority on sickle cell. In the same vein, we have Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, a World Bank development economist and an international development expert who sits on the board of several multinational organizations and currently drumming support for the post of Director General of the World Trade Organization. We have Richard Yazami of Morocco, known for the development of graphite node for lithium-ion battery. We have Mo Ibrahim from Sudan, a Sudanese British billionaire businessman who founded Celtel, telecommunication company, though sold, and he currently runs the Mo Ibrahim Foundation to encourage better governance in Africa. We have Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, the first female head of state in Africa, a Nobel Prize winner, and has several other international awards to her credit. Ladies and gentlemen, suffices to say, Africa is not dull. We are blessed with abundant human and material resources. We have lost it at the beginning, but we can take the mantle of leadership back to occupy our rightful place in the committee of nations in the world. Right now, let's look at Africa and developmental issues. Presently, most countries of the continent are witnessing a decline in terms of quality and access to education. Hence, we now have education tourism, where a number of Africans are traveling abroad in search of quality education. We have research outputs and patents on the decline, low ratings in global development metrics, such as Human Development Index, Corruption Passive Index, Global Competitiveness Index, Gross Domestic Product, among other things. Currently, Africa relies on foreign solutions to her local problems in the area of health, food security, environment, energy, to mention a few. Again, we enjoy scientific interventions and grants from abroad too, talking about malaria, Ebola, COVID-19, thanks to Melinda Gates Foundation and several other ones. Ladies and gentlemen, all these are likely pointers to the fact that there are gaps between higher education and societal development in Africa. Since the year 2000, global technology has been experiencing an average growth of 18%, while Africa represents just 0.3%, making the region the least developed. Similarly, the continent is still trying to catch up with the rest of the world in using technology to develop some of its economic sectors like agriculture, mining, and transportation. Let's now look at the gross domestic product. I'm talking about the top 10 African countries. GDP measures overall domestic production within a country. Nigeria is ranked #1 in Africa and globally number 30, followed by South Africa being #2 and globally 41. Ghana is #9 and ranked 78 in the world. Tanzania is #10 and ranked 80 in the world. Next is the Human Development Index, which measures long and healthy life, education, living standard, among others. The Sub-Saharan Africa is ranked among the low human development. I'm talking about a chart where we have very high human development, medium, but here we are in Africa, particularly Sub-Saharan Africa, ranked as low human development. Next is Corruption Passive Index. Out of 180 countries ranked in the world, the top 10 African nations, that is in order of the least corrupt nations in Africa, #1 is Seychelles, which is ranked 27 in the world, followed by Botswana, #2, ranked 35 in the world. Rwanda is #3, ranked 49 in the world. Ghana is number 9, ranked 75. Benin Republic is 10, ranked 83, which is just talking about measuring public sector corruption worldwide. Next is Global Knowledge Index, the top 10 African countries. And here we're looking at about 138 countries in the world. What's important to mention, according to the UNDP 2020 report, that the Global Knowledge Index measures pre-university education, technical and vocational education, higher education, research, development and innovation, information and communication technology, economy, and the general enabling environment. In this area, Seychelles is ranked number 1 and 50 in the world, followed by South Africa, number 2, 71 in the world. Egypt is number 3 and 72 in the world. Rwanda is number 9 in Nigeria and 99 in the world, while Ghana is number 10 in Africa and 101 in the world. Next is Global Innovation Index, which is a measure of the level of innovation of a country. And so here we have the top 10 African countries. South Africa is leading here as number 1 in Africa and ranked number 60 in the world, followed by Tunisia, number 2 and 65 in the world. Kenya is number 3 and 86 in the world, and we have the rest as listed. Ghana is number 9 and number 108 in the world. Malawi is number 10 and number 111 in the world. Next, we have Global Competitiveness Index, where we have 137 nations ranked, and here we are looking at the top 10 African countries. It's important to state that Global Competitiveness Index measures creating and maintaining an environment that sustains more value creation for its enterprises and creating more prosperity for its people. Rwanda is ranked number 1 in Africa and globally number 58. We are not surprised because of the giant stride that the president of Rwanda is taking. South Africa is ranked number 2 and 61 in the world. Botswana is number 3 and 63 in the world, followed by Senegal, number 9, 106 in the world, Seychelles 10 and 107 in the world. Looking at the way we stand, we know some countries in Africa are actually pulling their weight, but how about the giant of Africa? A number of countries in Africa, they are definitely not doing too well as presented, on those tables. Next is science, technology, innovation, and development. How involved are African nations? Yes, for some time we've been talking about STEM, meaning science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as the bedrock for national development. And recently we're talking about STEAM, S-T-E-A-M, talking about science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. We have these policies, but ironically, how well have these policies transformed the nations of Africa? According to the World Bank and the OECD, their view on science, technology, and innovation, I read, the mission of science, technology, and innovation team is to help identify, design, and implement science, technology, and innovation capacity building policies and programs based on global experience, which are essential to generate wealth in today's increasingly competitive global economy, and which are tailored to each country's social and economic development challenges. That's according to the World Bank 2013. So looking at the view of America on science, technology, and innovation, this is according to Barack Obama, I read. We need to build a future in which our factories and workers are busy manufacturing the high-tech products that will define the century. Doing that starts with continued investment in the basic science and engineering research and technology development, from which new products, new businesses, and even new industries are formed. Innovation is more important than ever. It is the key to good paying private sector jobs for the American people. Let us look at the view of the European countries. I read, our future standard of living depends on our ability to drive innovation in products, services, business, and social processes as well as models. This is why innovation has been placed at the heart of the Europe 2020 strategy, with the Innovation Union as the flagship. Africa is not left out, but again, without necessarily looking down on Africa, we have a lot of policies formulated. The implementation is a challenge. So here I have the African Ministerial Council on Science and Technology stipulates in Africa Science and Technology Consolidated Plan of Action, CPA, that the overall goals of the CPA are to enable Africa to harness and apply science, technology, and related innovations to eradicate poverty and achieve sustainable development. How well we have done as a continent on this is just for all of us to see. On this table, we have what trends in population and GDP. Here we have some continents of the world, Africa inclusive. To the far left, we have the population, and then the share of the population, the share of the GDP per the population. Africa in 2007, having a population of 957 million, close to a billion, as well as 2013 having about 1.1 billion population, but the share of GDP in 2007 is put at 4.7, 2009, 5.2, 2011, 5.1, 2013, 5.1. Compared to the Americas, where we have in 2007, 29.6, 2009, 8.5 across the line. And if you look at Asia, where in 2007 they have 38.3, 2009 40.8 as against 5.2 in Africa, and in 2011 42.7 as against 5.1 in Africa, and 2013 44.5 as against 5.1 in Africa. This will tell us how well the continent is performing. Let us look at what shares of researchers across 2007, 2009, 2011, and 2013. And this is a UNESCO science report. We have some continents of the world. And here the researchers in Africa in 2007 is just put at about 150,000 researchers. In 2009, 152,000 researchers, and in 2013, 189,000 researchers. But looking at the Americas, we have the number of researchers in millions, in Europe, in millions, in Asia, in millions. But in Africa, we're just talking about pass-through sum of 150,000, and in fact the highest still less than 200,000. Whereas looking at other countries, other continents, talking about 2013, in the Americas we have almost close to 2 million. In Europe, more than 2 million, about 2.5. And in Asia, about 3.3 million. And that is to tell us the happenings in other continents so that we'll be able to know whether Africa is doing pretty well or not, talking about the number of researchers. And by the time you look at this share of global researchers in terms of percentages, Africa is just 2.3 in 2007, 2.2 2009, 2.4 2011, 2.4 2013, and compare to Asia in total, where we have 39%, 40%, 41.7%, 42.7% across 2007, 2009, 2011, 2013, respectively. Next, we have what shares of scientific publications across some of these continents. And in Africa, the total in 2008 is just 20,786. And 2014, we have 33,282 as contained within this table. While in Europe, we have 438,450 in 2008, and in 2014, we have 498,800,000. Let me take that again, 498,817 compared to Africa that same year where we are talking about 33,000. We're simply not doing too well. And if you look at Asia, compared to this, to the 33,000 that we have in 2014, Asia, they have 501,798. You can take your time to just have a look at this. Next is patents submitted. Again, you look at Africa as a continent. In 2008, just 137. In 2013, 303. Whereas in Europe, we're looking at over 25,000. In Americas, we're looking at over 83,000. In Asia, we're looking at over 56,000 compared to just 137. 137, pretty small. And so if you look at the world share of patents from Africa, just 0.1 in 2008, 0.1 in 2013. I have the next table talking about internet users, and I'm sure it's not different from what we have seen. Ladies and gentlemen, looking at the present state of development in Africa, going by the ranking tables that we have just considered, for sure you will agree with me that the one-time continent regarded as being the cradle of civilization, where scholars of old came to learn at our feet, today we are just crawling behind other continents of the world. So next, I want us to have a look at African higher education system and the development challenge. Permit me to start with this quote from Dr. David Oyedepo, a man whose video I presented talking about the opportunities in Africa. He said, and I quote, "Universities on African soil must respond to the issues in the African society." So apt. Next to this is from Nelson Mandela, and I quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." The next quote is from Barack Obama, our former US president, and I quote, "The strength of the American economy is inextricably linked to the strength of the America's education system. Now more than ever, the American economy needs a workforce that is skilled, adaptable, creative, and equipped for success in the global marketplace." And according to the Director General of UNESCO, I quote, she said, "Education is the most powerful force in our hands to ensure significant improvement in health, to stimulate economic growth, to unlock the potential and innovation we need to build more resilient and sustainable societies." So therefore, looking at our education in Africa and the industry needs, you will agree with me that there is lack of skilled technicians occasioned by gross neglect of vocational and technical education, which is the major reason for the underdevelopment of Africa in general. Hence the need for us to refocus our education system towards transforming the abundant human and mineral resources for national development. I have three scenarios that I want to present here to justify the reason why we must refocus our education system. Scenario number one is just a construction that I embarked upon when I was the Vice Chancellor of Covenant University, 2012 to 2016. Then my team, personally, I was given the mandate as the Vice President to get the university listed among the top 10 universities in the world. And so that afforded me and my team to understudy some universities in America, in Europe, just to see how world-class universities are built. Most importantly, the structure we are seeing here. When we visited the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we saw their research center named as the Center for Innovation and Discovery. A two-story building. Coming back home, we decided to build a six-story building, and that is what we have standing within Covenant University right now as the Covenant University Center for Research, Innovation, and Development. Where I'm going is not really the structure, but if you look at the top right corner, that is the first floor of the building where we have the lift. The lift was manufactured by Hyundai, a South Korean company. And if you look at the staircase, the iron there, imported from China. And the lower level of the figure that I have here, we have chairs. Ladies and gentlemen, as simple as these chairs are, we have them imported from China. The furnishing in the office there also imported from China. The cooling system of that research center is decking, imported from Japan. Now the question is, imagine a multi-billion project. What were the contributions of Nigerians? Nothing but the cheap labor, simply served as laborers. Not only within this structure alone, if you look at major structures being developed all across Africa, we have them being championed and handled by Chinese firms. And so this is time for us to think, if our education system cannot lead to infrastructural development, cannot lead to major construction within our economies, then we have not started anything close to development. The second scenario is the automobile industry. We're just looking at modern cars all around. Here I have Mercedes-Benz talking about the automobile of the present. We have Hyundai cars, and I have Toyota from Japan. And looking at this, mostly what we have, say in my country, in Nigeria, we have these second-hand imported cars, and that is what has been sustaining our mechanics, because the technology has gone beyond what they were taught. And so having to work on this, there is need for us to refocus the education system of the continent in a way that we will be able to transform the raw materials, not only to serve as assembly plants, but to be major players when it comes to the automobile industry. My third scenario here is just a second-hand market here, and I have a slide to show. Looking, just a minute, the slide.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. And this is Jola the bride. You may kiss the bride. This is me crying. My wedding dress that I got from Katanga. This is Katangora, popularly called Super. It is one of the biggest second-hand markets here in Lagos. Today on BassaBox, I'm going to be giving you a tour of everything I can find here, from the bra section to the top section to the G section. And according to Timothy, he said that celebrities also come here to get their wares. Like I said, according to Timothy, not me. Alright guys, let's go. This is the entrance into the market. Now, as you can see, they have children wears, popularly called grade 1. They are really nice, fine, but like I said, they are okay. If I you buy your things from your market from Cotonou, I go buy them. Give me jeans with my size, maybe 500. Oh, no size. This one is small. You know me, I have big waist. So I can't find what I want here. Maybe I'll come back. No, this one small, Auntie. I see my breast. See this one now. This one small. You know go rich. You know go. See Anna. See this one short.
You know go test it, you go buy.
I go test them now, no worry. Perfect size. So what is even blushing? Oh my god. This one is my size. How much it be? 600. How much? I know guys 600 naira. I think they say things for here they cheap. Good afternoon, ma. Want to buy swimming pants? Of course, you know I go swimming now, so let me get it here at once. This one. This one? How much be this one?
This one is
250. How much it be last? Mommy,
300. This one at 300.
Mommy, show me another one. I'm trying to shop for my swimwear. Who knows? Maybe Timothy will just take me. Then let's go and swim. And then I'm prepared already because I have fabulous one. This business, when you start them?
Don't take. You don't take. What's it pay? At the Romali University. What's it jade? At the Bicole. At the Ramoto. Yes. Yes.
Can you see she has a car? She has trained her child to university. She has built a house on top of this business. And we are here doing BassaBox. I just got myself booked with a very sexy swimwear. Imagine me in this thing, looking all nice, and then nobody knows the secret. But I got it in somewhere called Katangora for just 200 naira. sure, guys. Remember that time I went to that market to do the waist trainer one? That waist clincher that will make me look like Kim Kardashian. Apparently, she has like the substitute one, which is the okay one, just for 600 naira, and I'm not even priced yet, which means that it is way cheaper than it is. Good deal. Ma, so how much is this? How much is your pants then? This one still has label. This is Nyash Goals. When my Nyash gets this big, we'll come back to Katangora and come and buy it. Nyash Goals. I don't know about you, but I just found the perfect wedding dress. And this is Diola the bride. How much is wedding dress? 1,500. You see, guys, you can get your perfect wedding dress from Katangora for just 1,500 naira. Alright, guys, this is the end of this store series of Katangora Market. If I've not proved to you that you can get everything that is used here in this market, and I don't know what else to do. Dun, dun.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I proceed further in my presentation, looking at the clip just watched, I think the question we should be asking ourselves as Africans is, who did this to us? Who did this to us? Who did this to us? Are our leaders really thinking? Do they have self-esteem? A country as blessed with human and material resources, we are not able to convert any of our endowment to finished goods. Is rather unfortunate. Now we patronize second-hand pants, bra, and name it. Ladies and gentlemen, by the time you look, you do a comparison with the tables earlier presented talking about the level of innovation in Africa, the level of researchers, patents, alongside the poverty level. Now you just wonder. At this point, it's just for us to make a clarion call to the AU, for God's sake. We deserve more than this. Current leaders should be mindful of history. A continent once tagged the cradle of civilization. This is what has become of this great continent. Let's leave that aside. Let's now look at what to expect in the future. Today we are talking about disruptive technologies and how are African scientists involved in this. Currently, we're looking at Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, where we have both animate and inanimate objects connected together, transmitting information, thereby making the world smart. This is the era of cloud computing. This is the era of unmanned area vehicles, drones. That is, military warfare has gone beyond taking your men to the forefront and being killed. You is just a war of wits through unmanned area vehicles, drones. Stay wherever you want to be, and then with artificial intelligence and whatever, you are able to perform whatever is expected of you without leaving your country. This is the era of 3D printing. We're talking of reverse engineering. The best way to do that is just to adopt the 3D printing technology that gives you the most efficient way of manufacturing. Big data is there, the blockchain technology. The challenge is, how prepared are we as a nation to take maximum advantage of this. And the totality of these disruptive technologies just highlighted, they are necessary technologies to create smart Africa. Talking about smart agriculture, smart education, smart factories, smart warfare, smart transportation, smart cities, just to mention a few. Permit me to share this with you. This is Torchlight. I was in traffic about 4 years ago, and I saw it being sold in traffic. It caught my fancy. I bought one that time for 1,000 naira, and let's say about $3, just a Torchlight. Why is this important? Now, this Torchlight was produced, manufactured in China, and there's no local content, no local component from Nigeria. What are we saying? These people are mindful of the fact that we have refused to grow, we have refused to develop, we don't have electricity. Talking about a population of over 200 million, what percentage of this population have access to electricity? And so this will definitely make sense. And so they are just ripping us off because of the state of our science, technology, and innovation in Africa. It may be wrong of me to generalize, but largely within the sub-Saharan Africa, that is where most of these problems are. And so looking at North Africa, the level of development there definitely is meaningful. The same thing with South Africa and a couple of other nations in Africa, but we have in Africa some giants that have refused to develop. Now let's look at lessons from other climes. I want us to look at the American model, the German model, and the Israeli education system. There's no problem that we are going through here that most nations of the world have not gone through before. Going by Montreal Act of 1862 in the United States of America, that was what gave birth to land-granted universities. Then America had no money to build universities across the states of America, and so 30 acres of land, federal land given to each state to sell, to establish universities, with emphasis on agriculture and mechanical arts. My focus here is the emphasis on agriculture and mechanical arts, meaning that was a solid foundation laid for an industrialized nation that is self-sufficient in food production. So you see, many of the American universities today, you see A&M. Those were the universities that were born out of the land grant model. That is talking about Alabama A&M University, Florida A&M University, Texas A&M University. And today, most of them are ranked among world-class university, but just talking about purpose. In a year, the America may have over 6 months of snow. Within the limited time available, America will still develop the food required for her citizenry, and again in other sectors of the economy, talking about nations where you have relevant education to industry growth as well as nation building. Let's look at the German model that is centered around vocational and technical education. The secondary education is stratified into 4 with emphasis on, say, gymnasium, real school, Jesup school, and half school, emphasis on gifted children, intermediate children, comprehensive school, but with emphasis on university education as well as vocational studies. What are the lessons to learn from the German model? You have students with diploma and vocational school can still proceed to the university. And there's a special apprenticeship scheme called Dual Asbidon, where students are attached to vocational training, through vocational training to companies. That is to say, we have non-formal education, vocation school, which is attended 2 times in a week for 3 years. And the remaining 3 days are spent working in a company. This fosters a rich blend of practice and theory. And after apprenticeship, graduates are registered and certified. Let's look at the Israeli model. And let me just share this Jewish philosophy on poverty alleviation as stated by Jonathan Sachs. I read, poverty for the rabbis was a curse with no saving graces. Poverty does not ennoble, it demeans. Therefore, the poor must be helped to escape from their poverty through education, training, the creation of employment opportunities, and help in starting their own businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, I prepared this particular slide, say 2016, when the population of Israel was just about 8.4 million, and you have the Jews scattered all over the world, the entire world population of the Jews put at 14 million, and predominantly a 60% desert settlement. Look at what I have to say about this. Israel has the highest ratio of university degrees to the population in the whole world. Israel produces more scientific papers per capita than any other people or group in the world. The GDP is more than her surrounding oil-producing countries, and this goes a long way to buttress this point that what makes a nation is not a function of the abundance of mineral resources deposited and buried under the ground, but intellectual capital. If you look at most nations of the world, we are highly endowed, but how well have we been able to transform these abundant mineral resources to the benefit of the African citizens? And one out of every 5 Nobel winners is a Jew. In proportion to its population, Israel has the highest number of startup companies in the world, second only to the US. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about a desert nation that exports food. Some call it a miracle, but to others, it is an enigma of culture. In Africa, what culture do we have? Any link between our education system and development? That is why the model I'm going to present to African scholar, scientists here, and perhaps what leaders is what I've captioned development-focused education system. Development-focused education system. And why this? I say any education system that cannot transform the resources from the crude to a refined form is a misfit. Lack of skill set and misfit of our graduates for the world of work, capital flight arising from importation of goods and services from the developed world, lack of infrastructure and enabling environment that engenders productivity and employability, and the challenge of globalization on resource-low countries, just to mention a few, telling you why we must engage development-focused education. And my model, I have 4 W's. The first one is, where are we presently in our nationhood or continent? And so I tell you that we have a continent that has abundant human and material resources, yet massively unemployed, and inability to convert available mineral resources to finished products. The second W is another, where do we desire to be? That is, what do we need? That is our needs. Of course, improved quality of education that is industrialization focused, availability of infrastructural facilities such as power, water, transportation, and communication networks, abundant food security, improved automobile, aviation, and tourism industry, among others. And the third W is, what do we have? Talking about the available resources, solid mineral resources, abundant agrarian farmland, aviation and tourism industry, abundant human resources. And the last of the W's, what do we do? That is the reforms expected. Our education should be modeled after what we have, by developing skills to transform raw materials, crude oil, coal, cocoa, rubber, etc. to finished products. Develop adequate manpower in the areas of oil and gas, food security, health, housing, transportation, and infrastructural development, among others, and build refineries and factories that will utilize our raw materials. And so now let me just take you through the array, the avalanche of abundant natural mineral resources that we have in Africa. This is the map of Africa, just showing a few. And let me just say, at the macro level, but at the micro level, you look at a country like Nigeria and you have hundreds of mineral resources. How well have we been able to transform this to finished goods? No way. Let's look at the other regions of Africa. This is South Africa, and you see the abundant mineral resources that we have there. Look at the Eastern Africa, the abundant mineral resources. Look at Western Africa, the available mineral resources. Look at Central Africa, the abundant mineral resources. Again, not Africa. And I make bold to tell you that Africa is blessed. Besides the mineral resources, I just want us to have a look at the rivers across Africa. This is the map of Africa, but just at a macro level, we don't have all. But let's look at the major rivers we have here: Nile, Congo, Niger, Zambezi, Ubangi, Uele, Orange, Kasai, among others. You see the length of each of the rivers and the number of countries they cut across. I'm driving a point, and you soon get to know the point here. Now, this is the map of Nigeria and the network of rivers. I have here, I said, besides the challenge of feeding, what of power generation? China is known to generate about 20 gigawatts from solar energy, from solar alone, solar panel. Nigeria as a country, through thermal, through river, through whatever, the total generation is still put at 5 gigawatt. What a shame. As a Nigerian, and at my age, I may be wrong, I've not seen any river bank where we have windmill installed, except until lately where we now have solar panel being installed just to increase the level of generation. The first time I traveled out of this country, it was to Belgium, en route Schiphol Airport, Netherlands. And having traveled by rail from the airport to Antwerp, Belgium, that was the first time when I laid my eyes on on windmills. It just dotted the river banks. Here we are in Africa, here we are in Nigeria. The question is, are we really thinking aright? Our leaders have traveled far and wide. We don't need rocket science to develop Africa, just good leadership. Again, the table I have here presents power generation in China, in US, India, Japan, UK, and Africa. The countries so listed there, we know they are countries, not continents, but have decided to sum up. That of Africa is the only continent there. And from what I have, Africa generates less than 50% of what UK generates. In view of the fact that the population of UK, as at the time I did this work, was put at maybe 66 million in population, and Africa, we're looking at 1.12 billion in population, and yet in power generation is that low. This is a shame. And let me quote additional, the president of African Development Bank in 2017, he said, and I quote, "Economies without electricity are pretty much dead economies." And so it is not surprising that Africa is where we are. But like I said, it's going to be wrong for me to generalize, because we have countries like Mauritius and Tunisia where they have 100% electricity. Egypt has almost 100%, they have 99.8%. Algeria generates 99.1%. Morocco, Seychelles, 99%. Cape Verde, 96.1%. I'm talking about data taken June 1st, 2020. Ghana generates 84.3. This is commendable. South Africa, 84.2. But how about other nations, even the giant of Africa, their country, Nigeria? Where are we? And so, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot be talking of development in science, development in technology, development in innovation if we don't have electricity to drive the innovation. But I have a problem here, which I've tagged the dangers ahead. The dangers ahead. According to the United Nations statistics, Africa has the largest concentration of young people in the world. The growing young population is one of the most significant factors for the future prosperity of the region. From that statistics, we have the report that 19 of the world's 20 youngest countries are in Africa. 77% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa is below 35 years, 3/4 of Africa's population. 34% is between 15 to 35 years. 2/3 of non-student youths are unemployed or vulnerably employed. Women are particularly impacted, often facing even greater barriers to accessing opportunities and earning equal pay. So according to Professor Emmanuel Nadoze, talking about African capacity, he opined that Africa must address the ivory tower syndrome, that is paper qualification, mismatch between educational qualifications and the needs for the job market. He mentioned that Africa must invest in critical technical skills that will produce railway engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, quantity surveyors, electrical engineers, just to mention a few. And that African education system must be development-based such that adequate manpower are produced to convert the abundant mineral resources to finished products. My fear again and lesson to the teeming youths in Africa, lesson to them is just having a look at this table. As an IT practitioner, 2016, I produced this table. I've not been able to update it. You bear with me. Where I have 4 cyberpreneurs, talking about Bill Gates, who founded Microsoft at the age of 20. Mark Zuckerberg founded Facebook at the age of 20. Evan Spiegel founded Snapchat at the age of 21. Steve Jobs started Apple at the age of 21. What am I saying? We should introduce African youth to entrepreneurship, and most importantly, cyberpreneurship, where the needed take-off grants may not be that much, and the skills acquired and the skills required can be acquired, maybe partly online, and youth across Africa can collaborate. Ladies and gentlemen, as of 2016, the personal net worth of Bill Gates was put at $84.8 billion, and the company worth $507.5 billion. Mark Zuckerberg's personal worth put at $70 billion, and the company worth 407.3. I'm sure what we have today, thanks to COVID, would almost be more than double of what we have here. Steve Jobs at 2016, I say $31.6 billion. I think that was at death. And 2016, $127 billion. The man is getting richer, even in debt. And the company worth of Apple put at $752 billion. That same year, ladies and gentlemen, the budget of Nigeria was a pass-through sum of $17 billion. So imagine having Nigerian youths, having African youth that endowed and into this, I'm sure can bail out the continent. It must be mentioned that yes, education is important, but remember, some of them dropped out of school to fulfill this dream. So I think this is one of the ways by which we can empower African youth. As I close my concluding remarks, and this quote from Lord Lugard in his book titled The Dual Mandate in British Tropical Africa in 1926. I quote, "In character and temperament, the typical African of this race is a happy, thriftless, excitable person, lacking in self-control, discipline, and foresight, naturally courageous, courteous, and polite, full of personal vanity. He lacks the power of organization and is conspicuously deficient in the management and control alike of men and business. He loves the display of power, but fails to realize its responsibility. Perhaps the two traits which have impressed me as those most characteristics of the African native are his lack of apprehension and his ability to visualize the future." End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, talking about a remark made in 1926. I'm saying That was what he told our forefathers. And almost a century after his assertions, it is still correct about our mentality as Africans. This is most unfortunate. You ask me, African leaders, under the aegis of AU, what are they doing? What are they really thinking? We are not disadvantaged. We are highly intelligent. We have seen Africans leave the shores of the continent and are blazing the trail, taking the lead in their respective professions across the world. But come to Africa, there is a challenge. Failure to fund education amounts to funding equipment importation and personnel to fight insurgency, robbery, kidnapping, corruption, ritual killers, and other social vices that result from poor education. The African state has the challenge of visionary leadership, corruption, and education, the consequence of which is responsible for the state of anarchy witnessed all over the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, I make bold to say that over 80% of the fortunes of Africa is lost to capital flight because of dependence on foreign solutions to our problems. Education, the quality is poor, hence we lose a lot of money to education tourism, health tourism. You see our president, heads of states, traveling out of the country in search of quality health, and the citizens left to their fate. Food importation, you just saw the abundant agrarian land that we have in the continent, rivers we have in the continent, the mineral resources. Again, equipment importation as a university done. I'm here making my presentation through the PC imported in here. Go to the classroom, the multimedia equipment imported in here. What are we doing? And from the second video that I show, the second-hand clothing materials where they are being sold. Where is the dignity of Africa? This is rather pathetic. There's need for good leadership. There's need for cross-border research collaborations within and outside Africa. If we must turn around the fortune of Africa. And so Africa in the next decades, there must be increased postgraduate and research output in science, technology, and innovation. Appropriate contributions from the African Center of Excellence as well as Pan-African University for postgraduate training. Now we're talking about African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Where do we stand? If we are incapacitated, that is, if we lack the capacity to transform the abundance of the mineral resources we have into finished products, the developed nations will just take advantage of Africa, bring their goods here, and so rather than exchange of trade in between us, what we will be trading will just be imported goods in here. We must put on our thinking cap, create an enabling environment where we have energy, where we have the required infrastructure, where we'll be able to improve the quality of education, health, and whatever, so that we can benefit maximally from the free trade agreement. We need strategic involvement and participation in the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as African Agenda 2063, in order to accelerate Africa's development. Vocational and technical education with entrepreneurial culture to be incorporated into our education system. And we must be able to differentiate in our higher education, either vertically, talking about polytechnic and technical colleges, and horizontally by creating specialized institutions in STEAM, that is science, technical, engineering, arts, and mathematics, research, and innovation. Even as I close to say, Africa must embark on skills revolution with massive investment in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We must revamp technical vocational education and training with proper levels of apprenticeship, looking at the lessons from the German model. Africa must create an enabling environment that will turn brain drain to brain gain. Foreign direct investment and remittances from Africans in the diaspora may not equate to national development under poor leadership and bad government. I wish to share with this esteemed audience that's part of the lessons that I learned at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where visiting their bookshop, I saw a mini tab loaded with courseware for students yet to resume. And to the glory of God, during my tenure as the Vice Chancellor of Covenant University, I pioneered mobile learning within the Nigeria education system. This is through partnership with Samsung, MTN, and the likes, and through one of our products, we have the courseware loaded onto the app. We have internet, connectivity all across campus, and our students are able to learn anywhere, anytime on campus. We give God the glory. And if Africa had developed up to this extent, the impact of COVID on the education system within the continent would have been reduced to the barest minimum. Again, in 2015, I started a project which I called Afro Scholar. I had the privilege of making a presentation during the e-learning Africa in Addis 2015 on this and asking for collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm still making a clarion call here, asking for individuals who may be willing to collaborate with me. And I want to appreciate Dr. Nwaru for his willingness for us to collaborate here with, just like what we have as Doctors Without Borders. This is a platform where we'll be able to create scholars all across Africa without borders, where we have one-stop shop for courseware on the portal, and African scholars can have access to researchers within and outside Africa at their own convenience. Ladies and gentlemen, looking at the state of development in Africa, we need more than ever before to collaborate across borders within and outside Africa. That is the only way we can leapfrog development. That is the only way we can encourage these teeming youths to get engaged in doing something meaningful for themselves towards the transformation of our dear Africa, while we still keep appealing to our fathers leading the African Union. For God's sake, for the sake of posterity, think of how to transform this nation. Think of education. Think of how to provide infrastructure, creating an enabling environment for growth and development. We can do better. We can take over development. We can rule the world. We can take over from the rest of the world. And what we are simply asking for is this old saying: give us the tools as Africans. Give us, create that enabling environment for us to thrive. We are not dull. We are gifted. We have the resources to develop. Make these things available to us, and within the shortest possible time, you see Africa emerge leaders and champions all over the world. And on this note, I want to appreciate you for your time, and thanks for listening. God bless you while I take whatever questions that you have. Thank you. This is the end of the presentation, and I know whatever questions you have through the platform can be forwarded to the convener and the co-convener. Once again, it's a privilege for making this presentation. Thank you, and then God bless.